I'm back. Um, Hi Cheryl, or hi Freddie, rather. Yeah. So no, I wasn't personally affected by the flood. Well, actually, it's not necessarily true. I have some close friends that weren't able to get up the Malahat because of the floods. But I do have family in Abbotsford and Chilliwack, and they're not having a very good time right now. So unfortunate. But they're safe and warm and have food. So that's all you can really hope for, you know. But yeah, no, it's pretty serious for sure. Yeah. Hi, by the way, Freddie. Good to see you again. So just out of curiosity, so we got a fair amount of people in here. We're gonna be starting in about 5 minutes here. But just out of curiosity, I want to say I've covered actions about 3 times. I don't cover it as often as I'd like because but it is actually an incredibly useful tool. I just want to get a feel for, so feel free to sound off in comments in the chat panel there. But how many of you are familiar with and have used actions? Or vice versa, how many of you are unfamiliar? So Cheryl is not familiar. John is not as well, but he would like to start using it. Awesome. Freddie has never used it. Okay. See, not familiar, says Christopher. Okay, yeah, this is going to be really useful. Sheila hasn't used it. Okay, so actions, does it replace presets? For edit mode, it functionally is presets. For develop mode, presets, it doesn't replace it for develop mode. So we're only going to be focusing on edit mode today. Develop presets are incredibly powerful. And actions are about the same degree of power. And in many ways, they incorporate layers. So they're kind of, they're similar to, but distinct from develop mode presets. Yvonne, yes. So you're not familiar either. That's helpful. Yeah, I think actions, the 2 most powerful tools in ACDSee are development presets and actions, in my opinion. And I come from a background of using Photoshop, right? Because I'm a graphic designer. And one of the things that I always found very frustrating about Photoshop is that its automated processes were quite, at least when I was using Photoshop extensively back in the day, I noticed that it's preset actions, like we call them actions, but I don't know what they call it for Photoshop, but they were often really bad. And what I mean by basically what you could do is you could play an instance of edits. So for example, if I was working in something like as I was previously, I was working in post-production as a brand director. So a lot of the things that I had to do was prepare documents for stationery. So stationery being things like business cards, rack cards, that sort of thing. And what you'd end up having to do is you'd have to go through the process of adding essentially document settings. So you'd have to go and you'd have to add a bleed because you're getting these things printed through a professional print shop. But you'd have to do all these things manually unless you set them up using some form of preset manager. And in the least, I haven't done this in a while, but about 4 or 5 years ago, that preset manager was an absolute mess. It was really hard to use. Anyway, so when I started working with ACDSee about, I want to say 6 years ago now, one of the things that was introduced relatively early when I started working for ACDSee was they added an actions manager. So the actions manager was probably about a year or 2 after I'd started working for the company. And I just thought it was so easy. It's like an incredibly easy tool to use. And it's very powerful, as you'll see in this workshop. And so I really do think that it, along with development presets, are two very strong tools. And I think the main reason why is because if you actually are an intermediate photographer and you go through the process of doing the same editing functions time and time again to photo sets, whether those things be visual changes, so adjusting curves, adjusting exposure, adjusting color for your images. Maybe you're a fashion photographer, or maybe you do wedding photography, as many of our actual users do, right? What you'll end up having to do is convert those files, all of them, to a different file format, right? And then B, maybe you're making something as simple as a black and white change to images. You're taking your images in color, right? Because you want to capture as much information as possible, but you're actually presenting those images to your client in both color and black and white. And so Actions is just the insanely fast tool to make that application change. What happens if you need to add your, some form of you need to add like a text, like your name, some form of watermark to your image. I mean, obviously you can use the watermark tool in ACDSee, but combining it with Actions gives you the ability to edit them and then also add your name to it as well. So Actions is just a very powerful tool. Fundamentally, it's probably one of the most powerful tools because of the amount of time that it saves you. So that is really what we're going to focus on today. Good morning, Owen. Nice. Yeah. So starting this workshop today, not a lot of people are familiar with Actions, and that's okay. The subsequent question I'd be curious about is, so I believe it was last year, or perhaps the year before, we did a fundamental overhaul on our text tool in ACDSee. For one thing, it was made non-destructive from its previous destructive state. And I'm just curious, in addition to Actions, how many people are familiar or are not familiar with our new text tool? I guess new in the sense that in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, it was introduced, I believe, in two editions ago. So Norman is not familiar. Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, so this is a pretty good workshop. So Freddie does use it, but I'm getting a lot of no's. Beecher are not familiar. Yes, but I found the path one hard to do. Yeah, that's fair. Not familiar. Okay, sweet. Well, this is a great workshop for everybody because it seems like there's a fairly low understanding of these tools, which is okay. So we'll go from the ground up. I'm gonna throw some nice jazz for myself to listen to, and we'll get started in a minute here. Yes. All right. Okay. So let's first cover Actions, and then we'll cover text. I'm going to navigate back to manage mode because we're actually going to open up a different image here. We can leave this. This is great. I'm using the text tool instead of there we go. Previously we used the notepad. Now we're using the text tool. We're upgrading here. So I'm just going to find an image that I think we can make a couple of edits to. And we'll showcase what we're going to be doing using the Actions tool. Where is that image? Number 24? Yeah, there it is. Okay. So, so Actions are applied in manage mode and edit mode. You make Actions in edit mode. So how the workflow works basically is you'll go into edit mode, you'll press record, and you'll start making adjustments to your images. And then what you'll do is you'll save that recording and you'll come back to manage mode and you'll apply those actions to new images. In order to showcase how to apply an image first, we just need to pop open something called the Actions browser. So the Actions browser, as you'll note on the top toolbar here, along with workspaces, batching, slideshow, that sort of thing. There's actions at the very end here. And so actions browser, if we bring it up, we can show a little bit more about what it does. Let's go to a detail, for example. So you'll notice that I actually have my image selected right here, right? So what it's doing is it's presenting a thumbnail to us on the right of these actions that we already have made. These are actually already pre-made defaults that come with ACDSee. I don't actually have any saved actions right now, so we'll go, or I have one saved action and we'll go through the process of making more. But the purpose of this window here is to showcase, well, if I click on these different actions, they're going to show a preview right here. So if I click on clarity, for example, like the image changes as I click on these different examples. And this is just the detail tab. So this is just one of the categories of defaults that we have here. So let's see what happens if I go to architecture. So architecture is a different category, and in it comes a black and white image here, a preset called Crush, which looks like it heightens the noise in our image. There's one called New York and Urban. And again, we can just keep flipping through here. So there's one category entitled called Black and White here. And so there'll be different variations of black and white. And what you can do is you can think of these actually as filters, right? Because when we go to play one of these actions on our image, it's going to interact like a filter would, and it's going to apply a filter to our image. So I'm looking at these different images or different actions rather, and I'm seeing that my thumbnail changes. Let's go to something different. Let's go to a filter, for example. So there's also a couple examples of true filters that are under this filter category here. So one of a bokeh effect. So those of you that are familiar with like a Christmas tree shot or something like that will be familiar with the concept of bokeh. It's when you get these really soft circles around light. There's one called dual tone, which doesn't seem to have any effect on this image particularly. There's a nice kind of sepia style gradient one, and there's also this panning one that gets a very blurry effect here. So as you can see, just using this drop-down bar here, there's already installed on your ACDSee right now a whole variety of different categories that contain different actions that you can apply on your images. So it'd be good at some point to just at least familiarize yourself with, prior to even creating your own action, just familiarize yourself with whatever concepts that there already are. So we're going to go through the process of creating our own action today, and we're going to do this in a couple different ways. But one of the things we can do in this actions browser is, like I said, we can actually play this action. So maybe we'll do that before we talk about any of the other tools here. But if I play this bokeh effect on our image here, what it's going to do, I'll just close the action browser for now, is at the very end of the document here, or this folder here, it brings up a brand new image that in this case is actually a JPEG, right? So this didn't overwrite my original image. Let's find it. I think it was 24. What it did is it created a copy of the image that has that effect contained within it, right? So I have a new image that's created in the same folder that in this case has the bokeh applied. In fact, actually, let's have a look at the image. I'm just curious. Yeah, it obviously doesn't necessarily fit for this image, but there's that bokeh application to our image here. So if we open up the actions browser again, what we can do is we can create a new category from this panel that our action is going to be created in edit mode. One of the neat things we can also check is actually, if we go to the show steps, that's right next to the preview here, we can actually show what is involved in regards to this particular filter, which in this case is actually quite simple. It looks like they added a layer. They filled the layer with a bunch of different brush strokes, and then they applied a blend mode to it. And that was the saved version of this action. So when we go through the process of creating our own actions, we can actually see those steps as well, which is really cool. Is everyone understanding so far how we could play an action using the actions browser on our image? basically a pre-recorded one that already exists within ACDSee. Nice. Okay. People are understanding that in this case, all we need to do in manage mode is open the actions browser, select one of these pre-recorded ones, and then hit play. So obviously that applies to what has already been created. We're going to get to how do we go to the process of recording our own actions. But before we do so, I want to just make one note. And we'll come back to the actions browser after we're done creating our own action here. But we're going to create a category by which our action is going to fall, where we're going to save that action. So we don't have to necessarily do this within the actions browser, but we're already here, so we might as well showcase the category function. So I'm going to click this little button here that says add a new category, and we'll create a new category here. Let's just call this category, I don't know, actually that's not very, let's just call it Adam's lighting category. And I'll hit okay. I think it should allow me to save with a, oh no, it won't let me save with a, there we go. So it wouldn't let me save with a special character there, but I just add it right there, and it's Adam's lighting category. And if we navigate to this category, we can see that this category is blank. And Bruno just commented, so although I don't have any actions available. So when you go to install ACDSee for the first time, it should come with actions by default. So if by any reason, especially if you're using Ultimate 2022 or 2021 or even 2019 or 2020, like all of these programs should contain it. So I would just, if you're in a process where you might want to look at reinstalling it or something like that if you can't access those actions. But the other thing too is if you're if this is entirely blank, if all of these categories are blank here, then it would be worth contacting support in regards to that, because I do think you should have actions in this category. So just feel free to shoot me an email, Bruno, and I'll make sure that we get you that sorted out, because that does sound kind of like a bug. Wayne asked, how do you get the menu across the top with workspaces? Actions. How do you get the menu across the top with workspaces? Oh, this menu right here. So this menu, I believe it absolutely should be there. Let's see here, panes, folders, catalog, kind of preview, properties, search. I actually don't know if you can get rid of this altogether. I know you can move it because most of the things in ACDSee are modal. We'll have another look at that at the end of the workshop. I don't want to, that's a bit of a deviation, but I definitely want to cover that. So I'm going to go navigate back to my image. And what we're going to do is we're going to open this image up in edit mode. So by the way, just feel free to add that to a Q&A panel, Wayne. Thank you. So we have our image opened up in edit mode here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make a couple changes to this image, and we're going to primarily use adjustment layers. And the reason why is because adjustment layers are something that we can save non-destructively. Okay. So what I would recommend is before we make any edits to our image, just the same thing for Nancy and Maurice, just contact me. Oh, I'll do this. Some people are having some issues with it and other people are not. So, but just to be clear, this only is in application to the actual default actions. This doesn't actually impact your ability to create actions at all. So everything that we're showcasing today is going to work fine for you. Yeah, it's just in regards to pre-recorded defaults. So I have my image here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the top here, and you can see that that same actions browser exists up at the top. Okay. So what we can do is we can actually open the actions browser, and much to the same much that I can in, pardon me, in manage mode, I can do this same function. I can run these functions on my image if I want to, right? So I just want to showcase that this actions browser is not exclusive to manage mode. It's also something you can bring up in edit mode itself. So if we wanted to, for example, run this clarity adjustment to our image, I can take this clarity action, this detail action right here under this category, and I can just go play. And what it'll do is it will have applied that action to this image, and you can see that the clarity has been increased. There's a bit more a contrast in my image, and it looks like it has sort of added a very subtle amount of noise that actually gives the pixels sort of a certain severity to it, right? So that's that clarity adjustment. I'm just going to undo that for now, though. And what we'll do is we're going to actually turn on the action function and start the process of recording one. So we've opened up an image, okay? All we're going to do is, in order to start making a recording, we're just going to navigate to the top here where you see this record button. So there's this little record button up here along with the play action function and the stop recording button. And I'm just going to click that. And you'll notice that record action pops up and there's this little window that shows that we are recording. So when we're recording here, what we have the ability to do is go through the process of editing. And as we edit, we're going to notice that there's going to be items that are added to this recording action section right here. So I'm just going to tuck this away. I'm not going to get rid of it entirely. I'll just leave it to the side for now, and we'll actually make some image adjustments. So looking at this image, we can tell one thing right away, that the white balance isn't correct. This image is far too blue. This wouldn't be what our eye had seen, so we're going to adjust that. So I'm going to navigate to the white balance adjustment layer. Okay, so I'm going to click on the adjustment layer itself. And the option panel right here will pop up with the ability to make a adjustment, a change to our image. So I'm going to move that over to the right into the yellow spectrum until my image is more appropriate. There's going to be some more changes that we're doing here, but I just want to make a note in regards to that. Now, if we look back at the recording action section right here, what we'll see is that we have both added white balance and adjusted white balance, which is true. That is what we just did. So those things are added to what we are doing, what are we recording. So it records our exact adjustment, but it also records that we've added white balance to our landscape image right here. So let's just put a pin in that and say, okay, that's the adjustment that we like. We like where white balance is at. Let's adjust the curves. So I'll go down once again to the curves adjustment layer. I will add the curves adjustment layer, and we'll slightly adjust the curves in our image. So I'm going to pull this slightly into the further into the, I'll reduce the light on that. I'll bring them further into the blacks. I'm going to pull this up, and I'll pull our top of our curve a little bit more northward here. And what I might do is I might actually raise my blacks out of the black spectrum and into the gray area there to just add a bit of texture to my image here. So I'm just going to add a very simple curve, like the standard darken the darks, highlight, add more light to the highlights. And we can see before and after that adjustment on our image. We can see things like the space in our clouds, between the clouds is lightened, and areas like the dark brick in our image are made a little bit darker. So very standard adjustment. And now if we look, we'll see it says add white balance, adjust white balance. There's also add curves, which we did, and we adjusted curves. And it even remembered that we hit a layer for a moment there. So I'm just going to close that, and we'll add a couple more adjustments. So we can add a color EQ adjustment. So I'll navigate down to color EQ right here. And what we'll do is we'll probably go not to the saturation tab. I like how saturated this image is, but we'll actually go to the brightness tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lower my cyan. And I think what I might do is I might actually increase slightly the blues in our image here. Just slightly. There we go. Just show the saved once more. Actually, what I might do as well is just slightly reduce the saturation of purple, because this area of my image here is very, very pink. So let's see if we can get that. Yeah, that's a bit more realistic. I might bring that. Yeah, I'll keep that down. So all I did here was change the cyan. I reduced the brightness and increased the brightness of blue. And in saturation, I just desaturated red and pink slightly to just address this little hot spot here. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I'll go into, let's see here, probably the RGB tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just add more red and green to this image overall. So I'm just going to add a bit of green and I'm going to add a lot of red. About just about there, I think. Maybe even just remove slightly a bit of green. Because our image is so blue already that if we can just add a little bit of red into our image, just slightly tweak these values. Yeah, so here's the before and here's the after with all of our adjustments, which I prefer. I think that looks a little bit more natural. It also has a bit more of a somber feel to it, which is kind of neat rather than this kind of, I don't know, it looks like a photo taken in Alaska or something like that. This is a nice look. So if I look again, if I look back to my recording actions here, you can see that, okay, I've added white balance. I've adjusted my white balance. These are true. I've added my curves. I've adjusted my curves. I clicked on show layer at one point, and then I added color EQ, I adjusted color EQ, and then I added RGB and I adjusted RGB. So can everyone see that I have a whole bunch of different adjustments right here that are recorded? So we're going to be working with just these. These are what we're actually saving. So when we have these, what we're going to do is we're actually going to stop the recording now. So one thing that I oftentimes that can come up, right, is I'll start recording or after I've made some adjustments to my image. Just keep in mind that when we turn on recording action, it only records everything that we've done after we've turned on recording action. So don't make the mistake of making some adjustments before turning on recording action. That's a classic rookie move that I've made a couple times and regretted it, because then you just have to go back and make that recording fit after the fact. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this recording action that I have. And again, keep in mind that it's still recording, so new adjustments will apply until I click on the stop recording. So stop recording brings up this save action. And what we can do is we can actually name this. So I'll just call this Adam's lighting correction. I see you have to select a photo to see the actions. Mine are fine, says Maurice. Bruno says, do we have to create the action name before we do these changes? So no, you don't have to create, oh wait, sorry. I have to create the action name before we do these changes. No, so you create the action name after Bruno, you've made the changes. So in the sense that I'm recording my action here, and as I'm recording it, that's when those actions are added to my recording. And then when I'm ready to save my recording, that's when we actually give it a name. Bruno, does that make sense? That I'm giving it a name after I've hit the stop button, after we've finished recording? Okay, great. Okay, so just to reiterate Bruno's point, he's like, do we have to name this action prior to actually creating it? And that's not the case. What we noticed earlier too, when we were in manage mode and we were creating a category, one of the things that's important to note is I didn't necessarily have to create that category here. So you'll see that the second function here, which is an important one, it says select a category or enter a new category name. Okay, so now we've already made a category. It's called Adam's lighting category, which I plan on saving this in, but I really want to note that I can actually just enter a new category entirely here. So if I wanted to name this, this this is really Jim's category. I could save it under that if I wanted to. So it gives me the option of creating a brand new category to save it under, or selecting one of the categories that we already have. As you can see, all of those default categories, provided that they're installed along with your installation of Ultimate, are present, but then the one that we just created in managed mode is also present. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take Adam's lighting correction. I'm going to name it then and there, and then I'm going to select my category, which I'll just call Adam's lighting category, and I'll click save. Now, the cool thing about this, there's a bunch of cool things about this, but I actually don't need to save this image because I've saved the action that created this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate away from this image. I'm going to discard my edits entirely. And then what I can do is I can actually go back into the same landscape image. So I can take this landscape image, bring it up in edit mode. And what I can do is I can go up to the actions browser. And you can see that it's at my most recently created category, and Adam's lighting category is present there. And what I can do is I actually just play this category on my image, and boom, we're back to it. We're back to all of the same adjustments. Now, let's also have a look at these adjustments, because we made these adjustments with adjustment layers. So if I'm looking at RGB, it's like, well, right, there's the adjustment of 28. The green is adjustment of 10. If I look at color EQ, my red and pink are set down. My brightness sign is set to low. So we can see here that it's exactly these values are being saved. And not only that, they're being saved as adjustment layers, which means they're non-destructive when I go to apply them. Owen asks, is it correct to think of the recording not as a time recording, but as a heading of historical adjustments to your photo? Yes, exactly. So when you're recording, Owen, I guess that's a really good distinction, because most people think of recording as, okay, well, I'm recording everything that is contained within that. So if I'm recording audio, for example, it's getting everything. Like when I make a mouse click, it's going to be in the recording. When a truck goes by outside, it's going to be in the recording. Actions doesn't necessarily work like that. Actions is just getting like these major elements that are sort of treated, like you said, as the same way that your history panel would be applied in ACDSee. So for reference, if I go to panes and history, okay, here's the history panel, and it's showing me that there's only one thing that's been done to this image. Here's my original image, okay, and then there's a actions browser. I've played an action on this image, and so it's treated like, in this case, Adam's lighting correction, and so that adjustment is done. So when Owen says it's working like history does, if I go back to original image here, and if I make a vibrance adjustment, I make some fucking changes here to my image. There we go. So here's my image, okay, with my vibrance adjustments. And you can see that my original image is in the history panel, same with add vibrance, same with adjust vibrance. So when you say that it's a set of historical adjustments to my image, it works in the same way, or rather actions are recorded in the same way that history is applied. Owen, does this answer your question? Okay, awesome. So that answered Owen's question. In regards to, it's not as granular as you think it. It's sort of getting the major elements when you go to edit your image. So I'm going to navigate away from this image. Okay, so we've created that action. We did not save our image. So regardless of that, so what we can do is we can actually apply this action not only just in edit mode, like I just described, but we can actually also apply it within actions mode, within managed mode itself. So I have my image here, and I can go navigate up to Adam's lighting category, and I can play Adam's lighting correction from either this subcategory here, this drop-down menu, or I can do like I did earlier. I can bring up the actions browser itself, take my image here and click play. So when I play it here, my image pops up. The difference here, okay, and this is noteworthy, is that when I apply this action in manage mode, it creates a flat image for me. So this does not contain the layers because it's a JPEG yet. We'll get to that. I can also, like I said, I can make this actions adjustment in edit mode, and then those layers will be held. Okay, I was getting to your question, Kirk. I didn't, but I'm glad that you understand. So I'll just delete this because I don't need it. So that was applied. Let me see, find that same image. That was applied using the actions browser, but I can navigate also again to the drop down here. So Adam's lighting category and play that category. And once again, it's applied as a image, as a JPEG here at the very bottom. So you might be wondering, okay, Adam, that's great. I'd love to, I love that I can apply that adjustment to my image in manage mode. And actually the cool thing is if I delete this image, I can apply that adjustment to, say, let's choose all these images. So I'm going to go from my landscape number 17 image all the way to my landscape number 24 image. And I'll just run that same Adam's lighting category on all of those images. So I'll click play. And what we're going to see is that it takes a moment to run through all of those images, and they are now added to the bottom. So not only did I can make that action, so I recorded that action within edit mode. I can apply that action in edit mode. I can apply that action in manage mode using the actions browser or just the dropdown. I can apply that action to as many images as I want simultaneously. Okay. So as you can see with all of these images, because in the case of our original image, those were warmth corrections. I was correcting the warmth of my image because it was very cool. And so all of these images, as a result, are much warmer. Let's compare them. Or actually, let's just view them. That's better. I'll go to view and to film strip. So here's that adjustment applied to this image, to this image, to this image, to this image, so that lighting correction has been applied to all of these images. And I can actually compare the two from my original. So we'll take, let's take this one, and this one, scroll up and find those same images, which I believe was, yeah, okay. Which was this one, and this one. And I can go to compare images down at the bottom left-hand corner here. And what it'll do is it'll give me the ability to pull two images in place. So I can show the before and after the actions application. So Christopher asked a good question. Can actions be applied to raw files? Yes, they can. However, they will be a new image will be created, and it will be basically it will be a writable file. Okay, and that was the next thing I was going to get to, is how you can control what file format is actually saved. But it's not going to be, okay, Christopher, it's not going to, you're not going to apply actions to a raw file and get a raw file at the end of it. Okay. What you're going to get is a JPEG or a TIFF file or some other file format, maybe an ACDSee file format. And that is going to be distinct rather from your initial raw file, right? And in that way, what we can view this is it's sort of like saving as. I guess it's not destructive in the sense that it doesn't affect your original raw file. Okay, so now what we've seen, we've seen the following. Okay, we've seen how to record an action. We understand how the actions browser can be used to play actions. Now we also understand how to apply actions in manage mode to multiple files. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to learn is how to adjust those settings. So I'm going to delete all these files and we're going to start again. We're going to go back up to those same files here. I think starting with this one and ending with this one. okay? And this time what we're gonna do is we're gonna go up to actions. We're going to Adam's lighting category, okay? We're gonna hover over Adam's lighting category, and instead of playing that adjustment, we're actually gonna go to options, okay? So I'm gonna click on options, and this brings up this little menu here. And so this gives us some phenomenal control, okay? So let's have a look at what it can control. So actions results. So right now it is set to rename the modified images and place in the source folder. The source folder in this case being my landscape folder, as you can see right up here. But there's other options. It can overwrite selected file, create copy in case of non-encodable files. So when Christopher asked, can actions be applied to raw files? Raw files are not encodable files. So if you were to set your actions to this function, it would create a copy the same way that it did just now. But we can overwrite writable files like JPEGs and TIFF files, that sort of thing, PNGs. What I might suggest is be careful with this option, because overwriting files does exactly what it sounds like. It overwrites the file, and that is fundamentally a destructive change. So I don't ever use this option, but I just want to note that it's available to you. The third option is the one that we're actually going to play around with. And that is place the modified images in the following folder. And what you can do is you can actually navigate to a new folder for these images to be placed in. So let's make one. I'm going to click on the browse function here. That will open up the folder section here. I'll go to pictures. I'll go to landscapes. In landscapes, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm just going to call it folder X. And as you can see, because ACDSee works directly off of our hard drive, folder X pops up. I'll click on folder X and hit OK. So now instead of being renamed and placed within the source folder, aka the landscape folder, what it's going to be placed here is it's going to be placed within folder X. Now, the other thing it's going to do is, okay, so we're not going to rename, that's not going to worry about that. Preserve database information, sure. Preserve metadata, I would click on that if I wanted to hold on to things like categories and keywords. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change the file format to an ACDSee file format. And the reason why is because this would enable all of those actions to be applied non-destructively to our file. So obviously, if I save as a JPEG, JPEG is a flat file. It's not going to have those layers. But if I save it as an ACDSee file format, because when we were creating our action to begin with, using adjustment layers, which are non-destructive, provided that our file is an ACDSee file, it's going to contain those layers. So instead of saving it as a PNG or a TIFF or something like that, we're going to save it as an ACDSee file. And I'm going to click OK. And now that category, that action category, the action category of Adam's lighting, has new options associated with it. So let's go back up to those images once again. We haven't actually applied it yet. We've just changed the category. I'll go up to Adam's lighting category and I will click play. And once again, it's going to go through the process of saving these images. It might take a little bit longer because we're saving as an ACDSee file instead of a JPEG this time. And we're just about done here. And we're going to find that those images are now placed in folder X, not in my landscape folder. So if I navigate down to the bottom, no images down here. But if I navigate into folder X, there you go. There's all your new images. So let's navigate to one of these images. Say, let's go to landscape 21 and we'll open it up in a edit mode. And when we do this, what we're going to notice right off the bat is now, because we saved this as an ACDSee file, we have full control over every single one of these adjustment layers. Does that make sense to people that I saved this as an ACDSee file? I have control over adjustment layers. So Cheryl and Ronald say yes. Awesome. I just want to make sure that people understand the power of ACDSee files. Now, you don't need to necessarily use them for this case, but as far as it goes for adjustment layers, now I have control over these individual qualities. So let's give you a hypothetical. you've taken a bunch of wedding photography images on location. Say you've taken 100 photos, okay? And they all have similar lighting conditions because they were taken in 2 hours since you got to the wedding. So you go into one image, and in edit mode, you make adjustments, lighting adjustments on that image, okay? And those lighting adjustments are made using adjustment layers, so they're non-destructive. And you go, okay, well, I know that I need to adjust the vibrance in these images, and I need to maybe tweak the curves on these images and adjust the exposure. So you adjust those 3 values, you record that and save it as, okay, say Cheryl's wedding, okay? And then you save that recording and apply it to all 100 of those images within your folder. When you go to save it, you make sure to change the category so that you're saving it as an ACDSee file. So in the case that a couple of the images are off, right, because the lighting slightly changed for a couple images, you just go into those individual criterias, for example, the vibrance or the curves, and you can just adjust them manually after you've made the application. So like I said, this is very powerful. Like, this is a hugely powerful tool. In many ways, it works like batch presets, right? In the sense that when you're using develop mode and you go to batch images in the same sense, and it still maintains the same degree of non-destructiveness, because develop mode, you go into develop mode, you can change the sliders around whenever you want, right? Well, the same is the case for edit mode, except this gives me the ability to continue to work with layers and to add and expand my image as I desire. So, okay, so let's go back to manage mode. Let's go back to this image. Actually, you know what? Let's go back to actions for a moment. And we're going to have another look at the actions browser because there's a couple other tools in the actions browser I'd like to highlight. Okay. So open up the actions browser, and here it is. Okay, so we've made a category with the actions, and now we've made an action. So now we can see the action, Adam's lighting category, Adam's lighting correction. Okay. So I can do a couple things. I can actually delete this action permanently if I wanted to. Note that I can also actually delete entire categories that I don't want as well. Okay, so these are 2 icons that we talked about. Creating a category, you can also delete a category. There's a couple other tools down at the bottom, and let's have a look at them. So one of the things we can do is import actions. So this is actually really cool, and no one's really taken advantage of this tool yet. I was curious whether or not people were utilizing this on the ACDSee forums, but I don't think that's the case. Basically, you can import actions that other people have created, or you can import your own actions that you've saved. So what you can do is you can actually go through the process of exporting an action. So if you really like it, you're like, hey, I want to share this with the world. Or if I want to save it on a hard drive because I plan on using it in the case of, maybe 4 years down the line, I want to use the same action. To put a pin in that, Bruno asked, so an action is good for similar lighting conditions, and saving an ACDSee non-destructive, a group of files give you a chance to tweak each picture independently. Yeah, exactly, Bruno. Yeah. And it is good for similar lighting conditions. It's also good for just like bulk changes in general. So even if you're like even if you don't want to work non-destructively, you can work destructively using filters, like change the geometry of your image, for example. Yeah, and just save it after you've made a couple geometry changes, apply that action to a bunch of images. Yes, it's destructive, but it's still highly efficient at the same time too. So when you're working with actions, just be mindful that adjustment layers, provided that you're saving your file as an ACDSee file, are always going to be non-destructive. Recording filter changes are going to be destructive. John, not currently. You can't combine multiple. You can't take like an action and apply another action to it. I don't think they're cumulative like that. Although I think what you might be able to do is if we take our image here, our lighting image right here, and why don't we play it? And I think what's going to happen is what it might do. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Actually, maybe it did. Maybe it'll just add a whole nother row of actions to this thing. Yeah, it sure did. Never mind. I'm wrong. John, you can just go nuts with them. You can add actions on actions to your images in the sense that you can apply one action. Okay. In this case, I have my original set. So RGB, color EQ, curves, and white balance. And then I actually just ran that same action on the image again. So I have white balance, curves, color EQ, and RGB. So they're being applied twice to my image here. But if I was to say, take this action, right? And in this time, what I'm doing is I'm running a detail change. Let's go to our actions browser and just pick something really egregious. Photo effects, Evelyn, sure. So apply Evelyn to this image. I'll click play. And Evelyn is saved as a JPEG. And the reason for that is because under lighting or whatever photo effect we had, keep in mind that this category of photo effects is still being applied with this set of options, which is rename and JPEG. But if we look at our image here, it still has all of these lighting adjustments. It's just now it's made even more potent with the addition of a further set of adjustments. So feel free to play around with that, John, and basically run multiple actions on your images, but you can't use the action browser to combine two actions together yet. Okay, so I was talking earlier about taking an action. So what I can do is I can go and I can export an action. So I really like Adam's lighting correction. So I'll export it, and let's just in this case export it directly to the desktop, and I'll call it package name action, just with my name Adam, I guess, added to it. Click OK. Oh, I have to select the action. That's fine. So I'll select action, Adam's lighting correction, and then hit OK. And that will save it successfully. So I think what I should be able to do is go to a new category. So I'll go to a different category like this one, for example, and I should be able to import directly, import action only into new category, browse to the package to import. So I'll find the exact one in my desktop. Action, boom, okay. And I think what this will do is it'll add the action that I just created, in this case, to a new category, not the original category that it was under. So if I hit okay. Oh, it tells me that one was a duplicate. But anyway, the point is that I can export an action and then I can import those actions. So what I haven't seen is anyone go through the process of interacting with the community. And I would really like to see this where people are starting to like create their own actions and share them. The point is the actions browser itself facilitates that function. You can export and import actions whenever you want. Last thing you can do is you can rename the actual, in this case, I can rename the actual action. So I can call it, I don't know, drama effect or something like that. And I can rename it. And so now it's got a new name from whatever it was previously. And I should be able to move this to a new category. So I can pull it out of this category and add it to a new category using this tool. Lastly, it looks like I can also adjust the options within the actions browser itself. So I can click on the little actions or the preset wheel here, or the editing wheel, which works very similar to opening it up and just clicking on options right here. So that is basically how actions work. Now what we get to do is we get to create actions after we have showcased how to use the text tool. So we're going to create an action using the text tool, but first we'll have a chance to talk about the text tool itself. I'm going to take a brief, very brief. So I just need to grab some more water for my tea. So if we can reconvene in 3 minutes. So it's 1:47 my time, but in 3 minutes, we'll reconvene and continue with the text portion of this workshop. I just want to grab that quickly. Does that sound okay for everybody? Awesome. Okay, I will be back in, so we'll be back in about, 3 minutes here, and we'll continue with the text portion of this workshop. Okay, one moment. All right. Let's give everybody a chance to come back here. There it is. And you can hear me again, okay? Awesome. Okay, great. Sweet. Okay. So let's just summarize what we're going to do here. So let's first of all talk about the text tool, and then I'm going to showcase to you how you can combine the text tool and actions together to basically record you writing some text and then play that text on as many images as you want. So the text tool is non-destructive now. It didn't used to be, okay? So this was changed, I believe, 2 issues ago, or maybe, yeah. When we redid text in the last edition of ACDSee, it was converted from a strict filter. So I don't have the filter menu open here, but I can showcase to you. It used to be one of these filters that appear on the left. Now filters are destructive changes versus adjustment layers and layers in general, which are considered to be non-destructive changes. So I just wanted to note that first and foremost, one of the cool things about text tool in ACDSee and how it's been changed is now non-destructive. So text is added to your image using the actual toolbar itself. So it's not added as an adjustment layer by clicking on one of these guys down here. Like I said, it's not added as a filter anymore. It's added using the text tool in the same way that you would add a shape or you would brush on something, that sort of thing. So I'm going to click on the text tool up here, and then we're going to incorporate some text into my image here. So when I click on the text tool, you'll notice that a series of toolbar settings will pop up, and these are adjustable, okay? So I'm going to make sure to click actually on the face of my image on the preview panel itself once I have the text tool active, and we can add some text. So if I click on the image, you can see that my text pops up, and a couple things are apparent. It has a bounding box. So a bounding box are these yellow these yellow nodes that appear on the edge of my box. And bounding boxes allow me to move my text. As you see, if I hover outside of the text itself, what appears is this, this move tool. So that enables me to move my text wherever I want. Then the other thing you might notice is that it enables me to expand my text. And as you might notice too, if we look over to underneath the toolbar itself to the size section of the toolbar settings, you can see that expand and come down and expand as I increase and decrease the size of my text. So if I want my text to be real small, like 80, for example, I can see now that that text is quite small and it corresponds with the size of my text. And when I expand it, well, now it's 700. So that gives you an idea of how this interacts with the actual size itself. Now, you might also notice that my text is, the font is changeable. So I can go up to Railway, for example, here, and I can change the font. That being said, I need to make sure that I highlight the font that I'm changing. So I can change it to Sitka Banner. What fun text could I change it to? I could change it to BioRhyme, for example, which is a text that I have installed on my computer. The size is points, Kim, points. So points, I'm not sure the difference exactly between points and pixels, but they're very closely associated. Yeah, I believe it's points. Yeah. And we can change it to DIN, for example. So I've changed my text and And then I've also repositioned my text using the move tool. I can also change the size using this panel itself. So if I wanted to change it to 500, for example, I can do that quickly and effectively just by using this function here. You might note as well that when I have text selected, I can adjust the actual weight of the text. So in the case of regular or oblique or bold, for example, I can adjust that within there. And each text family will have some corresponding font weights to it, unless it was designed without a weight in mind. So these are adjustable. Let's go back to Railway. And as you can see, I can go to Railway Thin, and Railway Thin is very similar or very distinct from something like Railway Heavy, right? So that's adjustable within that section. John Matthews added 72 points is 1 inch. That sounds correct. Yeah, totally. 72 points. Also, the other thing to consider is that the size of your image will have an effect on the actual exact image specifications. Is going to have an effect, obviously, on the way that you perceive text in your image. So my image is 5,000 pixels by 3,200 pixels. And my text of 500 will appear quite large on this image. But if I had an image that was 800 pixels wide, this is going to appear huge, right? So keep in mind that that is going to affect your final image. Christopher asked about kerning. So kerning is the space between letters. And that function I have asked for, Chris, but is not actually available in ACDSee yet. So kerning is not a function. Leading isn't a function yet. There's some sort of more advanced text functionality that has yet to be added to ACDSee. And trust me, I'm asking for them. Wayne says points come from typography, has varied throughout history, but correct. 72 points equals 1 inch. But yeah, Christopher, no, it is something that I'm very much would like to incorporate into ACDSee, is sort of a traditional text functions like kerning, leading, the ability to set superscript or that sort of thing, subscript, cross out, all of these things that are fairly normal. Okay, so we've placed some text. Let's actually make it say something, not just write text here. Let's go. I don't know, sunset, for example. Okay. Kirk says every sunset brings a promise of a new day. Okay, fine. Every sunset brings the promise of a new day. And then I'll have to adjust this, as you can see. So that brings the next point. So I need to adjust because this now extends past the edge of my frame. So I'll probably want to change this dynamic text, which in this case, I can reduce the size of my box if I wanted to. And that will place it in the center of my document once again. But the other way to get around this is to just select all and go to the frame function, which will give me the ability to actually structure a paragraph now. So a frame allows me to do something like this, which just adds a whole new line, I guess, in this case, a break to my image. Oh, sorry, to my text rather. I can add another break here. Every sunset brings the promise of a new day. So, and that is something that here, I'll just zoom in again. That's something that's adjustable. Again, once again, if I just select all and go back to dynamic, now dynamic sets it in this box and it's only interactable in this way. So if I can increase the size of it, but I actually can't change the paragraph structure. So I'll have to go back to frame, in this case, a new day. There we go. When I adjust the text and when I'm satisfied with the text in general, what I'll want to do is I can actually click the move tool here. And the move tool enables me to actually set it using this alignment function. So I'm navigating away from the text tool and towards the move tool. And with this tool, I can align it dead center in the center of my image. So I can do snap to center. I could snap to top right or bottom right, or sorry, top left or bottom right. And I can sort of play around with these different functions to find a location of my image that I like, or I can just do it manually as well. Bruno asks, wait, what did you pick? Can you be more specific, Bruno? What do you mean by pick? Randy, take care. Thank you for participating. Oh, Bruno, to get to this menu, you go navigate to the move tool. So the move tool is second on your toolbar. So text tool, move tool. Okay, so I'm going to click commit, and that moves the text. Now, like I said in the past, once you've navigated away from a filter, that's it. But because the text tool is non-destructive, if I want to edit my text again in the future, all I need to do is click on the text tool itself and click on the text layer itself. And that brings up the ability to once again change the function of this text I have on. It also looks like I can change the justification of my text. Now this text is already bolded. As you can see, it's set to a weight of heavy, but if I wanted to add an additional bold to it, I could click on that. I could click on a faux italic to add a faux italic, and I can even underline it with the underline function. But I'll keep it as center aligned for now. Now, the other thing that you can do within ACDSee is you can use something called the path tool. So the path tool enables you to create a custom path that your text moves along. So if we wanted to play around with this, maybe the best way to do we zoom out slightly. And what I can do is I can take these path nodes, these yellow nodes, and what I can do is I can move them around. Okay. And as you can see, as I move the first and second path nodes, it actually changes the position of my text. Now you might be wondering, well, if I move this, my text disappears. Well, what you can do is you can actually click on the path itself. And whenever you see this little note, this cursor symbol with the plus icon, what you can do is you can actually add additional paths to your pre-existing path. So that gives you the ability to sort of play around with those, and you can kind of create your own customized path using these yellow target nodes. I'm just going to make a rainbow here, which is very cheesy given the context of the saying. But you know, we got to ham it up for the crowd here. So there we go. So I have a rainbow that says every sunset brings the promise of a new day. And the other thing too is I can actually delete nodes by right-clicking on them. So in the same way that I can set a node, I can delete them. So, and as I do so, you'll notice that they sort of change the shape of my rainbow. So I add them by left-clicking, and I delete them by right-clicking. Does that make sense? How these nodes work in relationship with the curve, the path curve? Cool. Yeah, awesome. Just want to make sure people understand this. I don't think you can do right angles right now. I think that was planned to be added to the path tool, but I don't think right angles exist right now. So when you're working with path, you're largely going to be working with in this case, rounded curves. I'm just trying to think if there's a way. I don't think there's a way to set a straight hard angle. So if you're doing that, you might want to play around with the addition of extra text or something like that. So once I've placed my text using the curve path function, I can click on move tool. And once again, now this curve is now treated as a singular object. So that enables me to place it, like I said, in the center of my document, or I can place it at the bottom of my document or the top of my document if I wanted to. Keep in mind too, within the move tool, we also have the ability once again to reset the size of it. So I can scale it down if I want. And I can also, if I really want to make comprehension hard, I can also rotate it. So I can actually rotate the text that I have to sort of change the shape of it and that sort of thing. So I'll just set this in the center and click commit. And then my document says every sunset brings the promise of a new day. Now, keep in mind that because this is a layer, and like all layers, you can reduce the opacity of the layer. And this might be useful if you're creating a custom watermark with text, right? Because watermarks are traditionally semi-transparent. You can also apply a blend mode to the actual layer itself. So I can go to my layer here, I can go to blend mode and I can set it to overlay, for example, and that's going to overlay it against the layer that exists beneath it, which in this case is the landscaped layer. I can set it to hard light or soft light. I can set it to, let's see, multiply. No, that's bad screen, maybe. Yeah, we'll stick with overlay for now. But yes, so that application is now sort of semi-transparent through my image. Cheryl, not at this time. No, there's not a way to add perspective to the text. That's something that I've also asked for, is an ability to set sort of a 3D aspect to the text. But unfortunately, right now, it's still operating fairly flatly. Rick asked, when you're using your signatures, can you use the path to curve? Yes, I believe so. Coloring text to make it readable when the photo is black and white and the text disappears due to the same color. Coloring text to make it readable when the photo is black and white and the text disappears. Yeah, so I'll click on my text here, go up to the text tool, select my text. I'll hit Control A to select all of it, and I'll change the color. So I'll click on this color section right here, click on it, and let's change it to, instead, let's change it to blue. So I'll change it to blue, maybe like a light cyan blue, and I can navigate away from that layer to see that that layer is now considered blue. Yeah. If your image is a black and white image, in the sense that you can't add color to your image because your black and white image is treated through is being treated through a binary, you have to adjust your color settings in view. That might have been also what you're curious about. View mode, rather. Wayne asked, are there aspects you cannot change afterwards implied by the commit button? So committing is only occurs when you're interacting with the move tool, and there's nothing that there's nothing that's destructive with the move tool as it pertains to text. So you know, like for example, I mean, locked aspect ratio just keeps it so that it scales proportionately. But if I'm doing something like changing the location of it on that, committing that to that portion of the image, navigating back to the move tool, as long as I'm still selecting that layer, right, then I can reposition it at any point. So committing, as long as you're working non-destructively using layers, okay, then there's nothing that you can do within the commit tool that is going to change the relationship of the text, with the exception of unlocking the aspect ratio. So I'm going to do it just to showcase what I mean. If I unlock the aspect ratio, I think if I lock it again, it's not going to bring it back to its original location. So locking the aspect ratio is warping the text. Okay, so that's fundamentally warping the text. I'll set it back to where it was initially, and then I'll just recommit it. Okay, so that's placing text. And once again, text is non-destructive. So I'm going to save this file as an ACDSee file. Let's call it text file. Saving it, make sure it's an ACDSee file, click save. And I will navigate away. So I'll go back to manage mode. And because this is an ACDSee file, if I'm navigating back to this file in the future, I go back to edit mode. And there's my text. And if I take the text tool again and click on my text, the properties are brought up again. Cheryl asks, you can also add a drop shadow to text. Yes, you can. So under the layer effects section, I have the ability to add these following functions: inner glow, inner shadow, beveling, outlining, blur, and shadow, which is a drop shadow. So if you click on drop shadow, for example, drop shadow has its own functions. So if I wanted to change the direction of it to underneath, right, I would do that. If I wanted to lower the opacity of my drop shadow, if I wanted to lower the distance and maybe increase the blur or decrease the blur, I can do so. Note that when I apply an FX change to my image, I can click on the text and bring open the layer effects here. I can also be in a different tool, like the move tool, for example, and click on the FX panel right here. And FX will bring up, again, the layer effects window, and that gives me the ability to change these functions whenever I want. Layer effects, like drop shadow, for example, are non-destructive. Cheryl, does that answer your question? Or maybe it wasn't a question, but a comment, but either way, that's how you do drop shadows in the text tool itself. John asks, the question about text in black and white, use the FX and make an outline, make it more visible. I don't know if you can add a stroke. Do we do, I guess, yeah, we could add an outline. So if I go to the outline under layer effects, I can just reduce the thickness, and I can actually change the color to say like an orange or something like that. And that makes the text slightly more visible in that area. And I can lower the opacity slightly to sort of make it pop a little bit. So outline, I guess, functionally works similar to a stroke in that way. Keep in mind that the text is currently set to overlay. So if I wanted to maximum comprehension, I would just apply a normal blend mode, because obviously something like overlay will have an effect on the image itself. John, does that answer your question? Owen asks, thanks. More direct in this image, can you make the word day more readable, white, and leave the rest of the color? No. So you can only have no particular text can have a different color than the one you already have. So if I change this to white, it doesn't change the relationship of the text. Like the text all has to be the same color. Now you can, okay, if we're getting real technical, what I can do is I can duplicate this layer, this text. Can I? Let me see here. Commit. There we go. Yes. Okay, so I can take this text, duplicate it. Okay. Then what I can do is I can adjust the duplicated text to be the color white. So I'll set the color white. Okay. And you said day, right? You want the day to be, I'll apply a normal blend mode to this layer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the masking function, which we talked about in the previous workshop. And I'll just mask out everything but the word day. Okay. So just quickly mask this out. Forgive this. And because this is a duplication, I can apply the previous text. So now I have two active texts, one that has a mask eliminating all the other words other than day. So there's day, and then there's the rest of my text. So Owen, the way that you could simulate text with different colors would be to make a duplication of the text in the same location. Owen, does that make sense? I don't know if you were present for the previous workshop on masking, but that is a bit more complicated than we could cover in depth today, because masking is an 1.5 hour long workshop. Okay, great. Okay, so let's look at the last function of text. I'm going to delete these two texts that I have, and we're going to add a new one. And this time what we're going to do is we are going to, we'll set it to dynamic, and we're going to insert metadata. Bruno, we just did a masking workshop. So check out our YouTube page. That was, it's actually 2 workshops. So I will go to insert metadata. And insert metadata allows me to insert metadata of our image, whether it be EXIF, IPTC, or ACDSee metadata. And so this might be useful because you want to put something in your image like this. For example, let's go to EXIF. Maybe I want to include, what do I want to include here? Let's see here. File. You know what? I'm just going to go to file properties. I'm going to add a couple file properties to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include the file type and the file name as an example of the metadata that we can add. I can add ACDSee meta, EXIF, or IPTC, but for the purpose of this, let's add really simple metadata. So just file type, file name. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. And what is produced for me is 2 things. So I'll just shrink this slightly so people can see it. So the file type, ACDSee Ultimate 2022, ACDSee image text file. So again, I'm inserting file name and file type. So that's what is inputted into this file. So let's do this again with some different insertion here. I'll go back to insert. Let's go to ACDSee metadata. What can we add that would pop up? Let's go back to manage mode and we'll rate and number this image. So I'll go to, let's see here. I will put a rating of 5 and a color label of blue on it. Okay. And then I'm going to go to tools, metadata, embed ACDSee metadata and selected file. And then what we'll do is I'll navigate back to edit mode and we will insert, I'll delete this and I'll insert text. I'll insert exactly that metadata. So if I go to ACDSee metadata and let's go to rating and label. And what I'm going to do is when I hit OK, it's going to give me exactly the rating and label that I gave it. So I gave it a label of blue and a rating of 5. Okay. So what we can do is we can actually play our metadata on our images. So for example, I'll just delete this layer for now. I'll turn on our actions function, our record function. Okay. So I'm going to turn this on. So we're recording. I'm going to insert that metadata. So I'll go ACDSee metadata. We'll go rating and label and hit OK. And then what I'm going to do is you'll notice that I've added text to my image. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the move tool. I'll put it on the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll hit OK. And that will have moved it to the bottom right-hand corner. And then what I can do is if I was happy with this, I could actually maybe reduce the opacity to 20% opacity. And I could stop the recording. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in new category. And I'm going to call this action name label and rating. Okay. And I'm going to click save. Then what I'll do is I'll navigate away from this image entirely. So I'll navigate back to, I'll discard it, doesn't matter. Let's just click the last 3 images in our listing here. And we'll apply this action that uses text. So I'll go to actions, I'll go to new category, and I'll add run, label, and rating. And if I play that, it's going to create 3 new images. And let's see how it did with if it placed it correctly on our image. That might not have worked because of the image size. So let's try instead, let's try another one that I created which is the new category, add text. There we go. So because image sizes differ, if it's, and when we go to set those sizes, it's going to might struggle with placing it on like something like the bottom right-hand corner. But earlier I made an example of this where I created text that's in the center of my image. And as you can see, because some of these images differ in size, the text is placed differently on these images. That's very simple though, to just run a text application on my image. Bruno asks, perhaps you had no category nor label for these images. Oh, that's a really good point as well. So yeah, so let's change that. Bruno, you might have caught something that I totally spaced on. Let's embed that metadata. Embed in selected files and see if it is placed correctly. So I'll go back to new category, label and rating. Very good, Bruno. Yeah. So yeah, it's added correctly now. So it didn't look like it struggled with it at all. I just needed to add something as simple as the metadata in there. Now, if we view our files, you can see that it's added there. It might have struggled a little bit with this one because I see the blue, but not the 5, but same with this. So there is some limitations, but for the most part, that was a human error, not necessarily a ACDSee error. Yeah. Tom asks, hi, Adam. In response to the question of whether you can make one word in a text string a different color than the rest, the answer is yes. You don't need to create a layer. I just did it. Tom, in response to the question of whether or not you can make one word in a text string a different color. Oh, I didn't realize that was the case. Hold on, let me double check this. Let's do our text here. And just change the text center of the text here. Oh, sure enough, never mind. 2 users are catching me on my, catching me here. So you can change that. Lovely. Human error, we call the error code 18, 8 inches from the monitor is a problem. Rick asks, when you're using signatures, can you use the path curve? Yeah, there's no reason why you can't do the same function. So if you're adding a signature here, like this one, for example, so let's go ahead and delete this and record a path. So I'll just go to record in action like we're doing right now. I'll add a path. And in this case, let's move these nodes around to change the text relationship here. And let's go like this. Let's go sunset on our image again. Sunset at, here, I'll just do this. I'll go orange sunset. And I've added this text. Let's move it to the center of my image. Click commit. And now I believe if I save this as a signature, so if I go to new category and I'll just call this sig and I'll save it, I believe this should work just fine, just like the others. So if we apply that action to this other image, going to new category, sig, it'll apply it. It's just, again, it relates back to the size of the image. See if I can find a bigger image to apply this on. How big is this image? It is 4,000. This, oh yeah, this is perfect. So if we apply it to here, I'll go sig and play it. And that's interesting. It seems to be struggling with that. Wonder why. Let's go back to that. Signature of sunset. Change these. I'll maybe do a new recording. Okay. Signature of sunset. This might be a path restriction. Oh, I think I know why. Yes. Okay. So Rick, to answer your question, I think what it's doing is those nodes, which are saved as a non-destructible sort of layer. When I change the size of my image, it's struggling to replicate those nodes, because what's probably happening is the size of your image changes, therefore the relationship of those nodes change. So I think that's why I'm struggling with the path tool. Whereas something like previously where we used dynamic or frame, it worked fine. So I would say that's actually something I'm probably going to have a conversation with the developers about, but I would avoid using the path tool when trying to make actions of text currently, because it looks like it's struggling with the replications of those nodes, that curve there. That's a good question, though, and I thank you for it. So that sort of covers everything I wanted to talk about in this, which is, how to apply text to your image, in addition to looking at actions and the power of them, how to apply a variety of different changes to your image, and then looking at the combination of actions and text, which we just discovered are probably more oriented towards dynamic and frame text, and just being mindful of the size of your image that you're working with, because if your images are dramatically different in sizes, there might be some adjustments that you want to make to that action itself. But that sort of looks like everything that we wanted to cover today in regards to actions and text. Bruno asks, so I'll move on to questions now. And also provide my email so everybody can email me. There we go. Bruno, can we apply actions to watermarking a series of pictures? Yes. Yeah, you certainly can. So watermarking would be a bit different. So watermarking is a filter, I believe. So I'll just open my filter panel. I will stop recording, discard. I can start a recording and then apply a watermark. And watermarks will be much more successful than that of the actions to placing things, because we just redid this a while ago. But so I have my ACDSee watermark, and I can apply it to the bottom right-hand corner and click done on this filter, maybe after an opacity adjustment. Click done. And what you can see is that recording watermark is complete. And so now what I can do is I can save that watermark. I'll just save it under category called watermark. And we can apply this to other images effectively. So I'll take these last three images. I'll go to actions. I believe it's under new category, and I'll play that watermark. And I think that it shouldn't struggle in relationship with the last image, or it shouldn't struggle in relationship to the edge of the image at all. It'll just place them equivalently. So yes, you can actually apply an action to watermarks that contain either text or images. Bruno, does that answer your question? You might want to save your watermark. The color of your watermark should be, let me go back into this image. Once again, delete this text. I think it just loads a PNG. So if I go to load a watermark, for example, it's loading a PNG image. So whatever color your PNG image is, it will apply that. Let's see if there's a way to add if you were to just add something as simple as text. Let's see here. Is there a way to do that within? Watermark is a new layer. Okay. Tilt, add. It would definitely be under add, watermark, tilt, grain. You would have to rely on the text function to add a text watermark. As for the image watermark function, you would just load a watermark that corresponded to, so if you had, for example, a watermark that was blue, that would be what you'd want to upload if that's the image color that you wanted. So it's entirely reliant on the PNG to be the corresponding color you want. I'm not sure if that directly answers your question, Bruno, but as far as images when using the watermarking tool, yes, that's how that would work. Cheryl asks, can ACDSee please bring back speech bubbles and thought bubbles? I believe that has been heavily requested, Cheryl, but if you want to request it, please shoot me an email and I'll send it to our developers. Kirk asked, any plans for drag and drop alignment lines so that curved text on a path can be more easily balanced symmetrically? As I mentioned, Kirk, I think what I would like to see for the path function is 45-degree angles, like more like right angles, so that you can drag and drop accordingly. But I don't believe that's incorporated yet, and I'm not sure whether or not the developers have considered it for incorporation. So something that you, again, might want to email me about, and I can forward that feedback to the developers. And just a reminder that my email is aprice, here, I'll enter it again here, aprice@acdsystems.com. Yeah. Sorry, a little bit of a bump on the last portion there in regards to the text function not aligning correctly, but overall, this function works very well in relation to actions and the text tool themselves. And then provided that you're working within like an image that is big enough for the action to be applied correctly in relation to the space on the image. But yeah, please email me if you have any questions. Please email me if you have any suggestions for the product. And then, like I mentioned earlier, please email me if there's any concerns that you might have or you want to contact. I'll do my best to help you with any of the issues I'm having with ACDSee or direct you towards support if that is going to be more helpful. Owen says, thanks, Adam. Really took the fog out of the old brain. Great session today. As of the masking, advanced pass, duplicate, and advanced application. Awesome. And Owen is referencing the masking workshop that we did previously last month. Cheryl, you're most welcome. Andre, you're most welcome. Martin, you're most welcome as well. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Stephen. And just a reminder that this will be up on our YouTube page. I'll try to get it up as soon as I can, hopefully before the end of the day, but if not, it'll be next week. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, always looking forward to see where people's familiarity is at with the product. And hopefully this was helpful for you and you could see how actions is going to be a valuable editing function in ACDSee 1 that's going to save you a bunch of time. Yeah, Bruno, all of our workshops are on YouTube. Let me get you the link. There you are. So ACDSee Photo Studio or www.youtube.com Photo Studio. Go to playlists, click on workshop playlist right here, and you can see that we have our most recent one being edit mode from the ground up. We had one on that covers masking. And then we had one recently on develop mode. If you're curious about presets, develop presets, you'd check out that one. One also recently on Introduction Ultimate 2022. And then just a ton of other workshops going back, honestly, probably 3 or 4 years now. So we got lots of workshops on there, lots of content, and these are full workshops. Everything is included in them. Good times, bad times, the gaffes, everything is incorporated in them, questions, that sort of thing. So lots of stuff to look at in terms of workshop material. And of course, also on our YouTube page, we also have shorter form tutorials. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you don't already. It helps us get the message across really well. So that'll be it for me today. I'm going to mute my microphone. If you have any questions, I'm just going to fire up my email once more, and I'll see if I can answer any final questions just in chat. But thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I really appreciate you sticking around to watch this workshop on actions and text. So